In today's video, we're building a paint booth. Now the first thing we need is a box. I found this box just laying around in my basement. Don't know where it came from, but it's a pretty good size. It's got relatively thick cardboard, so it's nice and sturdy, which is very important for something like this. Do not pick a flimsy box. Now this is 22 3/4 across, 15.5 inches tall, and 12 inches of depth. But if I leave these flaps extended, that gains me an extra 7.5 inches, which I have some ideas about that, so we'll get to that later. Now you can use any size box that you want as long as it suits your needs. Just keep in mind what size of filter you're going to require. I'm going with a 14 by 20 by 1 dust stop furnace filter. It's a MERV 8, which hopefully is enough to filter out all the paint. Comes in a 2-pack and it cost me $13 Canadian, so really cheap. And as you can see, it fits this box really, really well. So now I just got to figure out how I'm going to cut a hole in the back of it to fit this in. I'm going to add a little tape to these edges just to try to give the box a little bit more strength. Obviously this box is not going to be perfectly square, but I am going to try to center up this filter the best that I can. We're going to go with that. So mark this. Now, we do not cut on this line right here. If we did, our filter would fall straight through. What we have to do is cut on this edge. So what we're going to do is measure this 1.1 1.1 all the way around. I got a brand new blade. That. We're gonna have to glue these corners in. I cannot tell you which one's the better choice, so I'm gonna use a little bit of LePage wood glue and some Elmer's glue all. It will figure itself out. Try not to glue my track, that would not be good. All right, I'll place this on the floor, put some weight on it, and let it dry. So I got that cut out. You can see I put some cardboard pieces in there and there just to make sure it's nice and flat for the filter. Now, the filter itself, it says this is the flow direction. Well, I am going to be putting it in backwards like this, because if I don't, I'm going to have this weird channel right here on the other side. So I'm kind of forced into it like this. So I'm sure it'll be fine, but you know, maybe it's not exactly correct. So I just used some thumbtacks to hold that in, and that will allow me to at least draw around it. I tell you, having two people would have been very helpful, but whatever, it is doable by yourself. But now I'm going to create the pieces to fit all the way around it. You can see just how unsquare this box is, but we'll make it work. So I'm going to be lining the walls of my spray booth with this foam board that I got from the dollar store. See, it costs $1.50 a sheet. It's going to take a couple of sheets. It's 5 millimeters thick, and I need to account for that thickness when I'm filling up these gaps right here. I've been thinking about how to hold my filter in place, and I came up with weather stripping. I had this little piece laying around right here. It's 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, and it does have a little bit of spring to it, which is good because that should provide enough of a tension around the filter to hold it in place. But because I only had a little bit amount, I had to get some from Amazon. You can see the foam's a little bit different. Hopefully it's going to be okay. This cost me about 13 bucks. You can see it's 2 spools of it. But anyways, you'll see that this stuff This kind of slides in and provides a nice seal. Plus the fact that it's weather stripping, it should seal in the filter really nicely. So win-win. I had to add these strips of cardboard right here just to make sure that fills the gap. I did the same thing with these little strips right here and here. And that is just out of the foam board, which I cut to shape and I layered on top of each other and glued them together. Speaking of glue, this stuff right here has a bit of a plasticky kind of finish to it. So I figured I may need a plastic cement. Now this stuff does work. Works really good. That is a good strong bond to it. However, you get it on the foam and that is eating right through it. So I also tested the Elmer's Glue All, and this stuff works just fine. That again is a nice strong bond. So this is the stuff you should use, and that's exactly what I'm going to use to secure these in place. This stuff stinks. Figure out where we need to cut it. Right there. Hopefully this adhesive is good enough. I'm going to let this dry overnight and we'll come back to it tomorrow. Everything's looking pretty good so far, but we can now turn our attention to building a cowling or a shroud over this filter right here. And I'm just going to use another piece of cardboard box. We'll add a little hot rod to it. Now, I do not know just how tall this needs to be to effectively get a good suction around there, but I'm guessing at least an inch, maximum of 4. That would be my guess at least. So we're going to add that on, but it's very important that you do have some sort of cowling or shroud on it because you want to maximize the suction across the entire filter. If you simply have a fan that's right against there, that's the only spot it's going to suck through, and it's going to make the rest of the filter completely useless, and we don't want that. So I imagine this is going to be the hardest part of this entire project. Well, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I don't really know what I'm doing here. I'm just going to wing it. But what I'm going to do first is cut this size of this box from this edge to this edge. That is the size of our filter plus an 1 1/8 inches. So that's my starting point at least. Make sure we're correct. Bam and bam. Nice. Cut that out. I marked off 1 1/8 inches on the inside of the box, and I'm going to do a very shallow cut into this cardboard. Like that. Put that on there, and hopefully I can bend this like that. Good. I need to mark 1 1/8 inches on the inside of this line as well, because that's going to get me to this point, which is what I need. So I should have done that before I bent this. Oh well. So I have my cardboard all marked off. I found the center of my cardboard by drawing a line from corner to corner. And from this point, I'm going to figure out where I need to put the hole for my, well, it's going to be ducting for the fan. And this is the ducting I am using. It's just this little, I guess, HVAC kind of ducting. I got it from Home Depot. It was like $7. And I wish I could have got one that was more central, but this is all I could find. So anyways, I'm going to cut a hole based off of this measurement right here. So in this case, it's a square. We'll measure this out. We'll go from 1 inch, and it looks like it is 5 3/4 by 4 3/4. Okay. Half of 5 3/4 is 2 7/8. So I will I'll make a point from the center here. We'll do the same thing over here. Cut that out and see how it looks. We have our hole cut out, and this fits in there really nicely. I took this to a vise and I pinched the edges just for a better fitment. The other thing I did was drew a line 2 1/8 inch from this edge right here, and I did the same thing on this side, and that outlines the perimeter of the top of my cowling or shroud, whatever you want to call it. And so I'll need to do a shallow cut here, a shallow cut here, and that gives me my bend points. I've also done the same for a cut here and on that side as well. Not sure I'll need that. I'm not going to do that until I do the cuts on the edges here. So you'll see I have lines coming to this point to that point. I need to cut that. But you'll notice there's 2 different lines. This is the line I'm going to have to cut because it goes to this crease line, which is just part of the box. I didn't do that. It's what it is. This one's a little bit different. Because they're slightly different, I'm sure this is going to be slightly lopsided. Whatever, I'm not too worried about it, but I think this is going to be the way to go based off of that. So I'll cut that, and then we'll do some bends and see how it takes shape. Now before I try installing this, I need to install my vent piece. So what I'm going to do, you see it's got these little teeth in the bottom. Looks like I'm gonna have to cut on this edge right here. See if I can eyeball that. That's pretty close. We'll cut these wings off. I'll do the best I can to not cut my fingers off. I'll try to make sure that everything is still pretty square. The outside done, I am now going to tape all these inside edges as well. With everything taped up inside, you think I might be ready to put the filter back in, but no! I need some lights in this thing, and I have a very simple idea. My simple solution for adding some light, I'm going to cut a window in the top of this box. I still have some of this plastic left over that I took out of a picture frame. It's 18 inches across right here, though I'm going to want about an inch of overhang, so I'm going to cut 16 inches. And then I'll probably want 3 inches here, 3 inches here, so that's going to leave me about 6 inches. So I'll figure out the measurements and then cut the hole. So we got the hole, and now we can put this on like so, right? And it definitely makes a difference. But the question is, do I attach this on the top, or do I go in and attach it from the bottom? I imagine the bottom is probably better for cleaning purposes, but am I going to do that? I don't know. I think I'm just going to attach it to the top right now using some painter's tape, so if I don't like it, I can always remove it. Now that we have all that light, let's put in our filter, which might be a little tricky to do on its side like this, but we'll get it in there. Oh, there it is. Look at that. Secure. We'll put in our foam board. The sides go in first. Well, that one fit in nicely. And this guy right here. That's a tight fit, but it's in. For the flaps, I'm just going to attach these with some clothes hangers. I obviously want to keep my paint booth as dust-free as possible, so I found this plastic bag, which happens to be the perfect size. So I'm just going to tape it onto this top flap right here, and we should be good to go. I wonder if I should have went with duct tape. I don't know. I thought this would be sufficient. So obviously you're gonna need a fan, and it's probably gonna be the most expensive part of your build. I know it was for me. I don't remember how much this cost me, but I'll let you know at the end of the video. This is a 4-inch inline fan. It's supposed to be 195 CFM, so it should be plenty powerful to pull out all those paint and fumes and whatnot. But you could use some computer fans or something, whatever works for you. Obviously a pretty beefy little bugger. I wish there was an on-off switch, but it's just plug and go. So I got this flex foil duct. It's from Everbuilt. It cost me like $14 from Home Depot. 4 inches, 8 feet long. I'm sure I'm gonna have to cut this into 2 sections. One that goes from my paint booth to my fan, and then from my fan that exhausts outwards. So we'll connect our hose to our duct, but I'll first put on this hose clamp. That actually cost me like $3.50. Like that. I had to change my mind. I'm going to plug the entire 8 feet into the back of this guy right there. 8 feet really isn't all that long, but I also realized that where the cord goes, I'm kind of limited to how I'm going to run it. So we're just going to do this. In this case, I'm using zip ties because I didn't want to spend another $3.50 for a hose clamp. That seems crazy. And this is free. And I like free. Dare I turn it on? I tell you, that doesn't feel like no 195 CFM. Check this out. It actually works. So I think I'll leave it in that arrangement and see if it's going to be good enough. So our paint booth is pretty much ready to go. We'll throw in our Lazy Susan, but I have one more surprise. A wireless selfie light. Oh, that looks fantastic. I am really happy about this one. I think it turned out great. I'm glad that these panels are removable because once they get covered in too much paint, I can just flip them around, use those up, and then once that's done, replace them for $1.50. So nice and easy. And plus, the fact that it's like a plasticky cover, I think it'll actually clean up if I wanted to. And the fact that these are white, it reflects all that lighting so I can see really well. So yeah, everything's looking really good. Now I mentioned earlier in the video I had an idea about these panels. Let's say when it's time to pack this thing up, pull out our Lazy Susan, we can take off the panels and just throw them in. And then bring that down like so. Close that one up, and close that up. Now obviously I'm going to have to cut this bottom panel to make sure it closes all the way up, which I'm probably going to do, but for now I'm just going to run it like this to see how I like it. Yeah, we'll try it out, but to fully make it properly closed up, I'm going to have to cut that. That's pretty obvious. I was a little worried it wasn't working very well, so I pulled down the plastic to create a vacuum. And check out that, like immediately. Holy cow, it does work very well. I moved it up here to see if it was pulling paint through, and look at that. It is. It's definitely pulling paint through, so I may have to do some sort of double filter deal. Let's talk about costs. I have my little sheet here. Furnace filters, $12.99. That's for a 2-pack. Foam weather stripping, $13.98. The 4-inch HVAC duct, which is on the back, $6.97. The 4-inch flexible dryer hose, $14.98. $3.48 for a hose clamp. 2 sheets of the foam board, $3. And finally, a 4-inch inline fan, which, as I mentioned, was the most expensive part at $30.58. Now, everything else was free. I already had it, so that's good. Grand total with tax, $90.28. That is Canadian prices. So for you American friends, that's like 15 bucks, right? No, honestly, it's about $60 or $65 US. So really not too bad. Something of this size, if you were to buy it online or whatever, retail, you're probably looking well over $200. I've seen some upwards of 800 bucks. Whoa. I've seen ones that are less than half this size, maybe even a third of the size, and they're about $100. So you're definitely saving money by doing it yourself, though you do need to factor in your labor and time. So how do we do on this one? I think we did great. I love it. I have been wanting to build a paint booth for a long time. I needed one. That's definitely for sure. But one thing I wanted to avoid was designing like 3D printed parts or using bits and pieces and materials that were not readily available. This, anybody could build it, and that's the beauty of it. Now, sure, you could change the fan, the size of the box, or the other materials, or whatever, but you can build this, and I think that's fantastic. There are a few things that I am extremely happy with. The white foam board, couldn't be happier. It's the perfect material. It's got the qualities that you want. It's easy to use. You could actually build an entire paint booth out of that stuff, but a box is already a cube. Why not make your life easier? I'm happy with the size of the box. I don't think I'd want to go any smaller than this. In fact, I don't think I'd want to go any bigger. It is the perfect size for what I use it for. I'm happy with the size of the filter in the back. We're maximizing that space, and we are getting vacuum out of the whole thing because of the design of our cowling in the back. That's working. I'm very happy about that. That fan, I don't think it's 195 CFM, but it is doing its job. It is working, and so that's great. Now, there are a few things that I might have to change or want to improve upon. One, that filter. I can see the green on the filter, so it is pulling some paint particles through it, but I know it's getting through that hose, and it's getting through onto this filter, so it's coming out the other end of the fan, and that's not good. Definitely not as good as I would hope, that's for sure. So I may need to improve to those $30 filters and see if that does any better. But I don't know. So I got to do something about that. The lighting. It does work, but it seems like I need a light right here that's kind of shining down in front just to, get better coverage of the front of my products in here. But overall, it does work, and I'm happy to have some sort of light in there than nothing at all. And then lastly, I'm likely going to have to cut this foam board right here just so I can close that up. Not a big deal, but just a minor little thing. Other than that, honestly, I think we nailed it. I do. I think it's awesome, but you guys tell me what you think. Leave a comment. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. Is this helpful to you? What do you guys have for a paint booth? Did you buy it? Did you build it? Whatever. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if the video is helpful, hit that thumbs up. Please hit the like button. It's very helpful to the algorithm. And of course, be sure to subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.